welcome or welcome back to my channel where I talk about books and bookish things. Sometimes I do talk about anime, sometimes I talk about other stuff that I'm watching that isn't anime, although it's anime a lot of the time. Or sometimes if there's a topic that I'm very why did I say it like that? I don't know why I said it like that. But sometimes if there's a topic that I'm very interested in, I will make a video about it. So if any of that intrigues you, definitely stick around. While I have prepared a video to talk about what I read in June, today I sort of have a reading wrap up prepared for June. It's basically a series that I will be talking about, so that should be interesting. But I would like to take time to talk about my reading year thus far. I've honestly read a lot of the books that I wanted to read for 2024. I had a 24 of 2024 and I've gotten to read a lot of them. I'll also talk about my reading goal this year, or lack thereof. I didn't have a reading goal, and I'll discuss some of my favorite reads. Regarding reading goals, 2023, I did set myself one. I set one for, I think, 20 books or 21 books, and I ended up reading 31 books. So I didn't set it purposefully low. I just assumed that that's the amount that I could read, because the year prior, 2022, I set my goal for 25 books and I only read like 21. So I didn't make my goal. 2023 was my best reading year, I think, ever. I think 31 books. I think that's the most I've ever read in a year. But I was on a roll beginning of 2023, like reading 5 books a month, which is still not a lot for some people, but it was a lot for me. And towards the middle of the year, towards the end, I was falling off, which is kind of what's happening to me now. I was doing real well, and part of that has to do with the fact that I took a class that I had to read at least 2 books a month. But right now, like last month, June was my worst reading month this year. And then July, we're already at July 17th. I don't even know how I've started books. I have not finished them yet. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with setting a reading goal, but I did not set one for myself in 2024. I just had an idea of the books I wanted to read, but my reading goal on Goodreads was set to 1, and I made that. So, pat on the back for me. I'm probably like 26,000%. Not 26,000. 2,600%. That's my record right now this year. I don't know what to call it. I set it for 1 because I just didn't want any pressure. I just wanted to read and just enjoy reading, and I've really been enjoying reading this year. I feel like it's not something I have to do, so it's something I want to do, and so it's enjoyable for me. I am currently sitting at 26 books. I was wondering if I would end up reading more than last year. Maybe I'll read 26 more. It's not looking so great. It's not looking so great right now, so I don't know if I'll end up reading 26 more books, but whatever happens, happens. If I don't read as much as I read last year, that's fine. To me, just in general, reading period is a success. If you read 5 books or 500 books or just 1 book in a year, I think that's good, because at least you're reading. I do wish more people would just read in general. I really think that if people just read, a lot of things would be better in our world. People need to pick up a book. That's all I'm going to say. Before I get into some of my favorite books of the year, I want to talk about some highlights that kind of have to do with bookish things. I got an internship at a small publishing house in Oregon, and obviously it's remote because I do not live in Oregon. Well, not obviously, you don't know that, but it's obvious for me because I am not in Oregon. I am really grateful for the opportunity. I feel like sometimes I'm just not doing good enough because I work also, and so I'm trying to like fit the meetings and stuff around my schedule, but I'm doing my best, and I hope that I am not completely worthless to them or the people that I am working with. Also, I am in my final semester, and so I am close to getting my BA in English. Thankfully, my classes this summer semester have not been hard at all. Right now I'm taking yoga, and the only thing that's been hard is that I currently am sore on my legs. I want to talk about the highlights of the year, at least just one. At the beginning of the year, it was my intention to reread Emily Henry's bibliography. Well, read and reread, because I've read most of her books, but I don't think people know this, but she does have YA novels before she went into adult like fiction, and she did YA, like YA sci-fi and fantasy. And so I wanted to read those books plus reread the books that I've already read by her. So it was my plan to make a whole video about Emily Henry because I do love her and I love her writing. I do still want to do a video about Emily Henry. I was going to reread her books up until the release of Funny Story, which came out in April, but it took me a while to just even get the book. I did reread at least, because I was planning to reread everything, but I at least reread Beach Read, and I was trying to be an annotating girly because I was going to go through all of her books and make notes and tabs and everything. I do enjoy annotating. Like, I had the colorful tabs that you would find on Amazon. I have markers and pens. It does make the reading process go a little slower. Plus, rereading Emily Henry's books, there's other books I want to read, so rereading kind of takes time away from the books I actually want to experience for the first time. But I did have a lot of fun at least revisiting Beach Read. For me, Emily Henry just has a way of writing real and raw, like, human emotion and relationships. And she seems to me, from reading her books, to be somebody who truly understands and gets people, which is typical of most authors. I remember when I was in middle school, we had a author come and speak to us. I don't know what she wrote. Was it Beastly? Was it that? Was that her? I think that was her. Oh my God, I think that was her. Okay, I think the writer of Beastly, you know, that book, the movie that Alex, what's his name? No, that's not. No, I think his name is Alex, isn't it? Yeah, Alex Pettyfer and Vanessa Hudgens, that movie. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm getting it wrong and I'm mistaking her for something else, but I'm pretty sure the author of Beastly came to my school and talked to us about, like, being a writer. And I remember her saying that she'll sometimes, like, go to a mall or something and just observe people, and, you know, middle schoolers, they were like, that's weird, she's a stalker, that's weird. But, like, I got what she was saying at the time, and I understand even more now as a writer and as, like, an adult. I mean, yeah, if you're, like, leering at people and, like, listening in on personal conversations, that's strange, and, like, taking note of people's conversations, but I don't think she was doing that. I mean, at least I hope not. At least, like, you know, just seeing how people interact. And, you know, when you read books, sometimes people are not great at depicting real human behavior. Like, dialogue and the way people just act doesn't feel normal or natural. So if you become a person who is good at observing people and capturing that, then it does make your novel, if you're writing fiction, it does make it feel more immersive, because most people can detect, you know, inauthenticity, because we're human beings, you know. Or if you're writing for a very specific audience, so if you're, like, writing for teenagers, for example, like, we see it with TV too, where characters will talk in a way that's just not how teenagers talk, and it's very obvious that, like, older people who have at least not been a teenager in a really long time, or have not interacted with teenagers, or they do interact with teenagers and just don't pay attention to them like they're children. So, and then they just write this, like, really strange dialogue where it's like, teenagers don't talk like that. Authors do have to be, or most authors are, observational people and have a certain level of empathy that they can, like, tap into in order to depict fake people, essentially, and make us care about them, even though they're literally just words on a page. On to my top books of the year. So we have Beach Read, which is a given. Of course, I've read it before, and rereading it again, it's not like I didn't feel anything when I first read it, but, you know, when you're first experiencing something, you are just taking it all in. So this book definitely hit me differently this time than it did the first time. I actually got emotional, and I don't know if it's because I experienced several things that caused me to have to deal with grief, and I can't remember if that happened before I read Beach Read the first time, but it definitely happened before I read Beach Read the second time this year. The death of January's father, and how she deals with it just hit me way differently this second time around, and I did not cry. It takes a lot to make me cry, but I was almost there. I was at the edge. And so, just aside from the way Emily Henry explores relationships and emotion and just does such a good job with it, she also does a really good job, for me personally, with describing the natural environment, because in her books since publishing Beach Read and then the subsequent books afterwards, the protagonist of her novels are typically somewhere else. So they're not in their they're on a vacation, traveling, something like that. So because they're in an environment that they're not used to, they're taking in all the sights, and we as a reader get to experience that through them. Of course, Emily Henry has to then, as the writer, actually explain the environment, and she does it really well. They are great beach reads because of that. Like, if you're on vacation, like, literally her books are great beach reads. I just feel like there's quite a lot of good imagery. My next book that I want to talk about that was one of my favorites of this year is The Bear and the Nightingale. Found this actually in the winter of 2023, and I wanted a fantasy book that would give me winter vibes. So I went to the library to try and find this book, but the library near me, like the closest one, doesn't have the biggest selection. I had no success with finding the book in the library, so I went to my Kindle and I went to the Libby app, and I found The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. However, it was on hold, so I did not get the book until like January, and that's when I read it. I have become more of a reader as of late, and so I'm really learning about the books that I like, because I mostly was just reading whatever books my mom had, because my mom is a big reader, so she would buy books, and whatever books were in the house I would read them. But the more I'm actually like curating my own personal taste, I know now like what I like, and it just, for me, it's just certain books, when I start reading them, it just clicks, something clicks, and it never feels like a chore to read. There are several books that feel like chores to read, even though people swear that they're so good, and it's not like they're liars. I'm not saying that they're liars, but it's just like, you know, some of these books are not my cup of tea, but I'm finding that I think I know what my taste is as in terms of like fantasy. So Catherine Arden, she is a super talented writer. Her characters are very, very strong, and even if they don't necessarily have the most lines or they don't have the most screen time, they like have a personality, and the world feels lived in, and I could see it in my head. Even the characters I didn't like, who I thought were awful, they were interesting to me. Like, they didn't have just one personality trait or one characteristic. They weren't cardboard cutouts. They were complex human beings. I know at least of one YouTuber that I watch who I've kind of, most of the time I feel like our tastes match up well, but at least for The Bear and the Nightingale, I remember watching a video and she didn't quite love this book. Obviously these are all subjective opinions, but I personally think that The Bear and the Nightingale is a phenomenal book. I guess one could say that it is slow moving in the beginning, which I do attribute to the setting. I have heard that the next two books in the Winter Night trilogy, that they like pick up with the action. But so this first book, it is, what was her name again? Vasya? I mean, her name is Vasilisa, but her like nickname is Vasya. But the first book is primarily set in a small Russian medieval village, and it follows Vasya from basically the time that she was born up until she's about like 14 years old. So you're learning about her and her story and her background and her family and like where she comes from, and seeing how she doesn't quite blend in with her village. So I do feel like the pacing does fit the setting, as in terms of it just kind of being slow moving in the beginning. I guess it takes a while to kind of understand what is happening, because there is something happening. Of course, it's a fantasy book, so something's up, but you don't quite realize what it is until, at least maybe I wasn't catching on quick. For me, it seemed like it took a while to get to kind of like I understand what's happening. But like, there's other things that are going on that make sense. There's just something, as in terms of the fantasy aspect, the magical, fantastical aspect, that it's like I didn't know quite what was happening, and then I started to understand. Good writing captivates me, and it keeps me interested. And it's not just writing, because there's more to writing than just writing. Obviously, there's making sure the plot makes sense. If the plot doesn't make sense, that'll take me out. Making sure there's actual, like, the characters feel real. If they say stupid stuff that people don't actually say, or if they act in ways that people don't actually act, then, you know, at least there has to be some explanation. Like, if it's fantasy and they act strange, like, explain that with, you know, context clues of like, this is how these people operate in this society. Next book that I want to talk about is Sense and Sensibility. So I took a Jane Austen class recently, and I had to basically read all of Jane Austen's books. She did not publish many. I mean, she published quite a few books, but you know, she died relatively young. Had Jane Austen lived, she definitely would have given us more books. She did have books in the works that she never finished. I thought that Pride and Prejudice would become like my favorite Jane Austen book, because that's just the one that everybody knows, everybody talks about. It is a movie, it's a TV series, it's been replicated in several different forms and adapted. I kind of just like expected that to be, that's when taking the Jane Austen class, that's the book that I was like anticipating. But a surprise to me, surprise, Sense and Sensibility ended up being my favorite book, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, of that class. I don't know if it was because it was the first Jane Austen book I ever read, and so I was just like excited to be finally reading something from her and to actually read it and understand what was going on. It feels a little daunting to read such an old book and to read like a classic, but Jane Austen's books are I feel like they're pretty accessible for modern audiences. There are technically two main characters in Sense and Sensibility, but Eleanor seems to me to be more the main protagonist. Her ending is kind of like the one I think that was most anticipated. But she's a very interesting character to me because she kind of has this like quiet strength. I did start a plot summary for Sense and Sensibility. My plan was to do all of the Austen books. That's gonna take a really long time, but I haven't even started working on like a script for part 2 of the plot summary for Sense and Sensibility. I just wanted to break down some books that are commonly used for school, so in case anybody needs to take a test, because I know like nobody wants to go through the whole entire book again, but like making a summary for these books that are very popular books to read in like English class, I thought it would be helpful to do a summary for anyone who's looking for kind of a refresher. I do still have my pictures up too, which is really funny. I've had people come in my apartment for like inspections and stuff, and I'm sure they're like, what is that? Moving on to the next book that I read that I really enjoyed this year was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. When I was in elementary school, I did a school project. I don't know what it was for. There's snoring, by the way. Again, I'm doing this late at night, so there is snoring. And if you can hear that, I do apologize. But when I was in elementary school, I don't know if it was for Black History Month or what, but I did a project based on like for Maya Angelou. I was like in the 2nd grade and I didn't know anything about Maya Angelou. I didn't read her book. How I knew about her, I mean, obviously I would have had to have learned about her through my mom or something, but for some reason, I remember this project because I was just super proud of it because I worked really hard on it. And through that project, I learned about Maya Angelou. Even though I hadn't read her stuff, I was just kind of sort of in awe a little bit of her as a person. I mean, the fact that I even remember that for some reason, I mean, obviously it was very important to me. But now that I have actually read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, I didn't need confirmation because she's Maya Angelou. Like, I know she's great. I know why. You know, some people are praised for being great when they're not that great, but I believed it without having to read her stuff. But actually reading her writing, I definitely can say that obviously she was a very talented writer. But just like finally being able to actually read her words for myself, I can just see why she was, considered to be so great. So I Know Why the Caged Bird Sing does deal with some heavy topics, specifically sexual assault of a child. I did add this to my video, my reading wrap up when I think it was February. I did add this in when I was editing, but now that I'm sitting down and I actually remember, I can say that when she was young, she was raped and she went mute due to the trauma, but eventually she found her voice in writing, and then also went on to give a speech at Bill Clinton's inauguration. Like, to have gone mute from such a traumatic experience to speaking at our nation's capital in front of a huge audience of people, being a part of a historical moment. I would recommend reading this book. Definitely a hard read at times. This is the first in like a series of memoirs, like other memoirs that I would assume, because this one ended when she was like a teenager and ended up getting pregnant and then giving birth. So I'm assuming that the other books in this memoir series grow with her. And I do feel like there's uplifting things in it, even though there are dark things at times. So in my May reading wrap up, I believe I talked about So Let Them Burn, and I talked about my many gripes with it. I can definitely see many people liking So Let Them Burn, and if you did, or you read it and you do end up liking it, obviously that's fine, just something wasn't clicking with me. So I was struggling with So Let Them Burn, and I just needed a break, and I went to this graphic novel because I thought it would be something easy to read, and it definitely was. I literally skimmed, like I read it, but I got through it in a day. But even though I know that it's okay to stop reading a book when you're not vibing with it, I know it's okay to DNF, but there's certain books where there's a sliver in me that is interested and wants to know what happens. And I wanted to know what happened. So I just took a break, and I took that break by picking up Belle of the Ball. Belle is a graphic novel that is basically the lesbian version of Heartstopper. It is set in high school, except it is only one volume. I know that Heartstopper is in many volumes, which I know that is something that I also need to check out. There's so many other things that are on my list. So I definitely hope it is one volume though, because I thought the main couple was really cute, and I don't want them to experience turmoil and strife, and I hope that they get married in their little fictional world. So this graphic novel was super easy to read, and as in terms of visually, I really liked all the pink. Cover of the book is pink. The inside is pink. It's just pink everywhere. Pink pony club. So it was actually the pink of the cover, the book cover, that caught my eye, and then I picked it up and I opened it, and the dedication is just what hooked me. It made me laugh. I thought it was cute, and it's just like a really good way to kind of appeal to your reader, and it's a good way to find your demographic. Second to last thing I want to talk about are the Lord of the Rings audiobooks by both Andy Serkis and Rob Inglis. I'm pretty sure I said Ingus one time, and that was really embarrassing for me because I had looked to make sure I was pronouncing his last name properly, and I didn't. It's Inglis. So I'm prefacing this by saying that I will never be unbiased when it comes to the Lord of the Rings. I just like it. So if I ever influence you to watch the movie, to read the books, don't blame me if you don't like it. I am an enthusiast. So I have read the Lord of the Rings before, and I plan on it's like something that I plan on revisiting regularly. I do plan on reading The Hobbit for the fall. I want to get this illustrated version of The Hobbit from Barnes & Noble, but it is like $40. That is definitely, I'm racking up my rewards, so maybe I can buy that for myself later. I have read The Hobbit before, but I want to reread it. I really enjoyed The Hobbit. But regarding The Lord of the Rings, I bring it up in my top books of the year, but really I should have had like a section for like my favorite audiobooks. The audiobooks are just so much fun to me. And so Rob Inglis and Andy Serkis definitely have different vibes. So it depends on what you're going for. If you want narration, like if you want to feel like you're being read a bedtime story, then go for Rob Inglis. If you want to hear voices and like character work, because Andy Serkis is like a voice actor, then you go, he's an actor. He's also a voice actor, obviously. So, go for his audiobooks if that's what you're looking for. Personally really like both, and I did not feel that there was like a superior version. It's just what you want, what you're in the mood for. So I was super anxious in the beginning of the year, and that's part of why I took the necessary steps to talk to my doctor and get myself some medicine, because I was like, I'm not feeling bonita. I am feeling very, very bad. I was super, super anxious in the beginning of this year, and listening to the audiobooks really, really helped calm my nerves. I learned something about myself, that audiobooks help me with my anxiety, and I was looking into another audiobook. I don't think that I will like Butcher and Blackbird, but I did kind of hear that the audiobook is kind of good, so I might get that. As just, I like listening to books that I think I won't like on audiobook, because it's entertaining. It's just basic entertainment for me. But anyway, I do like listening to audiobooks to calm my nerves. I've learned that it works for me. Anxiety manifests differently for everyone, but for me, like, it makes me feel really, like, I almost feel like dizzy, like it's just too much is happening. So if you're somebody who gets overstimulated, obviously I'm not an expert, and in my unprofessional opinion, I would recommend audiobooks. It may or may not work, but it's worth a shot, really, because it helped me a lot. And I don't know why my voice is probably shaking, because I'm tired and my back hurts. I'm sorry. The last book that I want to talk about is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. So I watch Carrie Can Read on YouTube, and I actually learned about this book from her because she just gave like a really positive review about this book. Because my tastes align with hers, I figured that I would like this book, and my expectations were high. And when your expectations are high, there's a strong possibility that you will be let down. But thankfully, I was not disappointed. I really, really enjoyed this book. The characters are very likable. Even Emily, the title character, canonically, she is supposed to be unlikable, but I actually find her to be very charming. Her unlikability is endearing. She's just really awkward. She's not mean or anything, or even like condescending or arrogant. I feel like she's just awkward, and she has to learn how to improve on her interpersonal communication, and she does improve over time. So that's good. She's a character that can evolve. I mean, if she stayed that way throughout the book and ended up still being the way that she was in the beginning, you know, that would be less than ideal, but she actually does change, which is what you typically want for characters. But Wendell for me was truly the highlight of this book. He reminds me so much of Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. He is a drama queen, honey. And I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed him. I liked the kind of dynamic of, you know, typically the like grumpy sunshine trope. It's the man and the woman. The woman is typically the sunshine, happy, like manic pixie dream girl, but Emily is more down to earth and humble, and Wendell is the flashy, emotional one. He is a fairy, and so he operates differently than humans do. He's very authentic and like genuine in his emotions. Again, that separates him from most humans, even though he looks human, aside from just being very like supernaturally handsome and beautiful and attractive. His kind of attitude towards humanity and just how he navigates the world really is where we kind of see his fairiness. But he's a character that is not perfect. He's annoying. He can be frustrating at times. He's very dismissive about humanity to the point where if there are humans in literal peril, he is not quick to want to help them, which I, again, like. Feels sort of alien because he's not human. He is basically a different species. So yeah, the fairies in this book, they feel like fairies, which is what I just really liked. They're not just human beings who like to have sex and do magic-y things. They are like actual fairies who just feel very different. Really do want to read the sequel, which is a good segue. I have no idea what to read next. I am currently reading A Tempest of Tea, and then I'm also reading Gothicana because I decided randomly that I want to make a video talking about that book. I'm almost done with A Tempest of Tea. I am like less than 100 pages done. That has taken me a long time. It's a long time. But a lot of these books on this cart are books that I want to read this year. So like I have Legendborn. Oh fuck, oh my god, I thought I was gonna fall. Oh my god. So I have Legendborn, which is like, I need to read this book. I'm kind of scared because I want to like it so bad. I'm like, what if I don't like it? But so many people really like it. I don't know. And then this one, who, by the way, the person the artist who designed Legendborn's cover also did this one, Blood at the Root. The same artist, you can tell because there's like a similar, obviously, style. These covers are just gorgeous to me, so that's part of I mean, I really wanted to get this book anyway, but the cover really stuck out to me. And then, oh my god, this book, like, I'm a sucker for books that are pretty. I'm a very visual person, so packaging, like perfume packaging, makeup packaging, skincare packaging, it gets me. And book covers are essentially packaging for what's in the book, which, you know, I was not sure about buying this because I don't even know if I'll like it, but I couldn't resist. I've been reading so much fantasy lately, so I thought for my next reads I might just go ahead. I mean, I am reading Gothicana, which I don't think is really fantasy. I mean, it's a dark romance, but my plan was Gothicana was random. I logged into my Libby app and I saw that it was available, so I was just like, oh, I'll download it. So I was not really planning on reading Gothicana anytime soon. I was actually planning on reading Emily Henry's Funny Story. I have really high hopes for The Familiar. I don't know what this book is about. I saw this and I'm thinking witchcraft, but I don't know. I don't really know what it's about, but I just think it does have sprayed edges. I got this from Walmart, but I didn't care about the sprayed edges. I mean, it's a really nice cover. It's a really nice book. When I saw this, I just thought it looked really cool. So excited to read this. Listen, I took Anthropology of the Undead and learned way too much about dead bodies, and this book I'm excited to read because it's a little morbid, but the author is Mary Roach. She's super witty. Read a little bit for my class. I kind of want to know what the overall theme of the book is, like, you know, why did the author decide to write about human cadavers? Anyway, so these two books in the Winter trilogy I will get to. I think I'll read them in the wintertime, and then that brings me to the sequel in the Golden Compass series. I read the first one, loved it, I'm kind of afraid to read the second one because like what if it doesn't, like the first book is one of my favorite books of all time for sure. Like what if the sequel doesn't live up? But I have to read that. But definitely that's gonna be a winter one as well. My camera is literally dying, so I gotta speed it up. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will be back soon, hopefully. Bye.